You are listening to the IFH Podcast Network. For more amazing filmmaking and screenwriting podcasts, just go to ifhpodcastnetwork.com.
Welcome to the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, episode number 434. The enemy of art is the absence of limitations. Orson Welles.
Broadcasting from the back alley in Hollywood, it's the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, where we show you how to survive and thrive as an indie filmmaker in the jungles of the film biz. And here's your host, Alex Ferrari.
Welcome to another episode of the Indie Film Hustle Podcast. I am your humble host, Alex Ferrari. Today's show is sponsored by Rise of the Filmtrepreneur, how to turn your independent film into a profitable business. It's harder today than ever before for independent filmmakers to make money with their films. From predatory film distributors ripping them off to huckster film aggregators who prey upon them, the odds are stacked against the indie filmmaker. The old distribution model of making money with your film is broken, and there needs to be a change. The future of independent filmmaking is the entrepreneurial filmmaker or the Filmtrepreneur. In Rise of the Filmtrepreneur, I break down how to actually make money with your film projects and show you how to turn your indie film into a profitable business. With case studies examining successes and failures, this book shows you the step-by-step method to turn your passion into a profitable career. If you're making a feature film, series, or any other kind of video content, the Filmtrepreneur method will set you up for success. The book is available in paperback, ebook, and of course, audiobook. If you want to order it, just head over to www.filmbizbook.com. That's filmbizbook.com. And today's show is also sponsored by the Heart Chart Screenwriting Masterclass taught by legendary screenwriter James V. Hart, the writer of Bram Stoker's Dracula, Hook, and Contact, to name a few. His unique story mapping system will teach you how to get your script ready for production and the marketplace. To gain instant access, head over to bulletproofscreenwriting.tv/Heart Chart. That's HART chart. Now, guys, today on the show, we have writer, director, editor, producer, actor, and author, Josh Folan. Now, Josh is a 15-year veteran in the independent filmmaking game, and he decided to sit down and write a book to share his misadventures, what he has learned, and all the different ways that he's put together multiple films over the years. His book is called Still Filmmaking the Hard Way. And Josh walks you through the painstaking step-by-step process of making 3 sub $250K budgeted films, while explaining, scrutinizing, and contrasting the experience in a voice intended to entertain and not lecture. I had a ball talking to Josh, and I can't wait to share this episode with you. So without any further ado, please enjoy my conversation with Josh Folan. I'd like to welcome to the show Josh Folan, man. How you doing, Josh?
Good, man. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thanks for being on the show, brother. I'm a fan of your book, Still Filmmaking the Hard Way. I feel like we might have, I feel that we might have been cut from the same cloth a bit, because you're as jaded and have as much shrapnel as I do, probably, in this business.
I have my share for sure. I don't know. It's all relative, but I certainly have my share.
Yeah. You're battle hardened, sir, as they say. Yeah. You are battle hardened. So
I did 11 years or 13 years in NYC, and then 2 more in LA now. So 15 years in those 2 places doing this shit. Yeah.
You've got some scars. Got some scars. Yeah. So before we get started, man, how did you get into the business?
My background's fine. I went to school for finance, Ohio State, and worked briefly in that before moving out to New York for in front of the camera stuff. Mm-hmm. And I was there a couple of months, actually. I booked something for Comedy Central, kind of sent me down the acting path, took some classes, William Esper Studios and some on-camera stuff, got a job on one of the soaps, and working on there. I was on there for like 3 years, All My Children, nice. On ABC. So. And it was good. It was a reoccurring U5 day player thing. It wasn't a contract role or anything, but it was a nice first real job for sure. And while I was on that show, another guy and I started producing theater with the actual important soap stars. They sell tickets and have fans that are pretty rabid. So we did okay with that. And towards the tail end of my run on that show, I did some really bad horror film, 6 kids locked in a house kind of thing. And the other male lead and I had similar horror thriller kind of scripts. And in our naivety, we decided to go out and try to raise financing for the two of them at once, as if having 2 products to sell to financiers.
Because it's easier. It's much easier to get money for 2 projects, right?
Right. Well, that actually would have been maybe smarter. We were thinking that just like having 2 options, like pick one, like they're, apples and oranges or something.
And did you think that at any moment it was going to just like when should the money drop? It should be dropping.
Oh, of course. Well, I don't know. I honestly, it's so long ago. And I tend to be I wouldn't say glass half empty, but the glass is exactly 50%.
Right.
So I don't expect great things to happen. I anticipate hearing my no's, but there's certainly no way you can anticipate the number and the type of no's you're going to hear before you try to raise financing for a film, for sure, especially with no experience. Like, it's a like, why in God's name would anyone give you money to make a movie until you've shown you can do that activity and bring it to fruition? You know what I mean? Like, why would anyone do that? So yeah, it's not easy to start. And certainly we had our difficulties, but
isn't it insane that our business is I mean, you don't hear someone going, I'm going to go build a house. I need you to give me $400,000. I'm going to go, I've never built a house ever. But I've seen HGTV. And I feel strongly that I have a vision and I think we can do it. And I
keep Evernote running with everything they say on the shows. We should be set.
But that's kind of the insanity of filmmakers in general. Like I'm guilty of it. You obviously were guilty of it. We all have this.
There's no way you get to that first step, that first rung on the ladder, without that blind leap of faith and just bumping your head into a wall until it happens,
And then every once in a while, that guy or that gal gets the $1 million, because I've worked on those projects.
Sure.
And some dumb money said, hey, I want to invest in this kid. Let's go for it. And I've been in those projects, and you just see this. Rarely does it come out okay. I mean, you're talking about minuscule.
Yep. Even into my career, the projects that I'm covering in the book here, that we shot in 2015, 17, and 18, and that's over 6 years into my career on the first one there. So I've been doing it for a while and done enough films to not be considered like I have no idea what the hell I'm doing. And even in those cases, the money came to every one of them in like random ass, unexpected ways that were almost exclusively a product or a function of just the cast it until something bites. And that's you got to collect your nose. You have to collect your nose. It's as simple as that. And that makes the yes that much better. But understand that you're going to be collecting a lot of those, and you just never know what the yes is going to be. So expect no's.
Expect those, and expect to start collecting as many of them as possible, because the more you collect, the closer you are to someone saying yes.
Precisely.
And it's
by law of averages.
On the by law of averages, and it could take not only it's not going to take 6 months. It could take 3 or 4 years sometimes.
Sure.
Especially when you're starting out and don't have a track record. Now so you're going to start your movie. So let's say there's filmmakers listening right now that, okay, we have this movie. We want to try to go raise money. Should you define the audience for that film prior to the development of it even? Like, should you know who you're going to sell this to?
I think, it never hurts. It's never bad to do the work. It's never a bad plan. I think with smaller projects, that first time, like we made a God only knows how many pages it was, business plan with all these sales projections where you're depending on completely unfounded comparison projects.
Was this a horror film
in your mind at the time?
It was a horror film.
Well, my very first film was, we called it. It's a love story. It happens to happen in a really fucked up dark place between a serial killer and a prostitute. It was my very first film. So we were able to market it as a horror. Such.
So in the projections, did you use Blair Witch?
We probably did. I honestly don't even remember. Like, we're talking.
Everyone,
I'm sure we did.
Everyone uses Blair Witch, Paranormal Activity, like the biggest unicorns in the last 3 decades.
Unicorn is a great word for it. Yeah, and and honestly, it's just it it's not bad to know that stuff. So when you have the conversations, you have some sort of at least basis. I think it's more important, I find, when talking with investors to be wildly, especially going through it now a number of times, to be wildly transparent, because it's actually more, I think, attention garnering to have a conversation with someone who has money, particularly if there's someone who does any investing with regularity at all, to hear someone sit down and the first thing they say is, you need to be okay with losing this money. That's something that they don't hear, because if people are trying to be sold or who are being sold things all the time, don't hear that maybe ever, but let alone as the first thing said in the conversation. So in one aspect, it just gets attention and gets someone to listen to you, maybe that hears this type of thing all the time. But it's also honest. And if you want to create any sort of longevity in this career, in this line of work as a producer, like, you don't, especially someone with money, you don't want to burn that bridge. So if you walk into it being completely transparent about what the realistic side of this business and find people who want to invest in your projects for a reason other than the independent film business is about, unfortunately, I don't think, in my opinion, in the ultra low budget sector, I'm saying, those projections mean more when more money is at stake, when
bigger stars are playing.
Exactly. Yeah. You can use things that actually can be quantified, because you can't quantify so many aspects of these very small projects, sub 250K projects. You can't quantify these things with any realistic metric. So trying to qualify them with investors and the way you put the projects together in some sort of ultra quantifiable way is completely unrealistic to me. And there has to be a reason to do it.
But the only way I can even think of doing that is if you have certain cast involved, and then you can use their former projections of what they've made on other films in similar genres, and you can go, look, you're not going to get Nicolas Cage in that movie, but let's say you get Michael Madsen or Danny Trejo, and in that world, and you've paid him for a day to come out and shoot out the scenes.
And these are quantifiable things in the foreign sales market, sure, but I think even that is kind of.
Oh no, it's not
a really small project. It's super unrealistic, It really
no, it isn't. It's something. It's something you might be able to hang your hat on, but it's not something that it's.
Especially if you're working, like, I like to make, festival targeted kind of clever people in rooms talking kind of movies that have something to say. It's even more undefinable there. If you move into, Danny Trejo are working in these genre movies, these things that do have a quantifiable foreign marketplace for them, where that can be determined. But I talk to sales agents about some of these movies, dramas and stuff, and they're like, it's execution based. That's what they call it, execution based. So it means they're not going to give you shit right now. If you bring me a good movie and it has someone I think I can sell after you do it, let's talk.
Maybe.
But in the development stages, they have no value realistically. You know what I mean?
So, and I noticed that you keep your budgets low, under 250. Now, a lot of filmmakers listening will say, but Josh, I can't make my movie for less than $1 million. I mean, I just can't. I need $2.5 million to make this film. I have to have this to make it. I've been preaching from the top of the mountain for such a long time. I'm like, if you can make your movie for 15 grand and it looks good and you can sell it for 30, you are in a business.
Right.
You're not going to live off that. You can make 10 of those.
If you want that to be your mantra, then by all means have it. Like, I'm not going to, that's, we talked about this, just kind of the film industry is such a, who the hell, you just don't know what's going to happen. And, there's things do shoot to the moon sometimes. And I'm not going to tell anyone what they're doing is wrong. Like, if that's your thing and you think you can do it that way, and whether you do or don't have a plan to get there, I'm not going to tell you not to do it. I will tell you realistically, someone who, and that's what the book is like. These aren't the roadmaps to make your movie. These are 3 things I did step by step, and that's how I did it. Like, I hope you can learn from that. I can't tell you it's transferable. Every film project is its own unique problem set, and good luck with it. Like, all you can do is educate yourself as much as possible and bump into the shit you have to bump into on the way to the finish line, and hope you get there. But it's certainly, if you are more realistic about putting together a project, especially if you don't have a lot of experience, where you don't have a track record that is quantifiable, like, good luck, but it's a whole lot easier if you meter yourself and come up with an idea that can be done at an executable amount of money that you can convince whoever you have to convince around you to finance it, that either you can make their money back if that is their core reasoning for investing in your project,
Right.
and that's something you have to determine, feel out, and be responsible and honest about when you're having those conversations. Or if you find someone who's willing to invest in you or wants to invest in art, or in the case of Ask for Jane, that's a movie that has a borderline documentary component to it, or social justice component to it, that has, our financing came to that because it had something to say about something that mattered to the women who paid for it. And they want to make their money back. Of course, no one wants to lose money, unless you're, I don't know. I shouldn't say that. Who knows? But.
I've met a couple of those guys. They're like, yeah, I just want to go out. Can I just come on set?
It's good for my tax break. It's
a good tax break. I just want to come on set. I want to hang out with the actors, and I want to do the red carpet, and maybe go to a festival or two. This is why I'm giving you $200,000. That happens. It happens.
And that's still not wanting to lose money, but it's not the reason they're investing in it. Exactly.
Correct.
And Ask for Jane was absolutely an example of that. They wanted to tell this story about a group of women who advocated for women's reproductive rights in a time when they weren't being properly advocated for or being properly respected by a whole lot of people. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So that's why we got to make that movie, because we found someone who cared about what the movie meant, not because we were trying to create a commercial product that was going to be financially viable in the long run. You know what I mean? Hopefully we can make it happen that way in the long run, but who knows,
But you have a niche audience with that. I mean, and that's not even a small niche. It's a fairly large niche.
Especially right now. Yeah.
Especially right now. So it is a timely film. There's an audience for that film. And I think
there has been. We did incredibly well at festivals. And,
I'm sure that's a festival darling. I saw. I was like, oh, please, this is perfect.
Absolutely, yeah. And the funny thing is, I came onto that after the script stage for the most part. We dealt with it a little right before we shot, but basically that script was done when I came on board as a producer. And Kate and Rachel, the women who, were the catalyst for putting that script together. When they started writing, it was pre-election. They had no idea that it was going to become that. And that's a perfect example. That's another filmmaking lesson too. Like the whole idea, when you talk to these sales agents, they'll tell you this thing is hot right now. Religious, faith films are, faith films are earning money right now. Why don't you try to do one of those and I can help you put that together. Da, 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 da. And you can chase that, but what are the odds that the thing that is working right now, 3 years from now, 2 years from now, when you get this whole thing to the finish line and it's ready to come, it's still going to be relevant. It's highly unlikely. So you're much better served, in my opinion, making the films that you want to watch. That's what I make. I make movies that I would want to watch, and whatever happens. At least I can stand by knowing that that's the core value of it. That's the core purpose of this, and whatever happens, I have to accept it. But if you chase those things and it goes wrong, that's got to be just soul crushing. To do something that you hate.
Oh, trust me.
Care about. And then
I've been there. I tried to, I had a project that was floating around around town. We had talent attached. We had all this stuff, taking meetings left and right. And it was of the moment, which is funny, because of the moment, it was a little bit ahead of its time. It was like maybe 2-3 years ahead of its time. But it was still kind of like that whole vibe of what was going on, this action movie I was doing. And then it was just like, oh, nobody wants a female lead action star. Like we can't.
Which you can't get a movie made unless you have one now. So
yeah, I mean, you can't do that. There's no box office star. So there was that whole thing. And then now it's come back into vogue. So you just don't know. I mean, look, when Passion of the Christ came out, first of all, nobody saw that one coming. And then all of a sudden faith-based films started popping up everywhere because, oh, there's a market here. Let's make some money. And that's what happened. So you just can't, you've never know. Now, what are a few things you wish you would have known before making your first film?
It's actually, I just took a project. It's just a short film with a first time film, and talking to them about whether or not it was a fit on both sides of the thing. They were asking kind of a similar question to that. Like, what do we need to know that we don't know? And I'm like, the biggest thing probably you should know is that you need to accept what you don't know and stop trying to fix it. Like, don't try to anticipate. Like, shit's going to happen. It's going to go. Days are going to go awry. Things aren't going to go according to plan. And the biggest thing you need to do is understand that you need to be open to whatever those constraints end up being and be adaptable. And I am a wildly over the top, organized, preparation-minded individual, contingencies for contingencies, et cetera, et cetera. So you can do all that. And again, just like we were talking about with the underlying business plan to a project, you should do all that work so you know what it is, know what the skeleton of whatever you're doing is, but understand that when you get there on the day of, that all goes out the window, just like a shot list. Like, time might run out. We might not be able to get that thing. We lose light. This goes wrong. This shoot right now for there's a million things that can go wrong. So have a plan, but understand that plan is probably going to be useless on the day of, and understand that you have to be able to adapt to whatever the situation is. And there's no preparation for that other than being open-minded. You know what I mean?
Right. And I noticed that too, because when I've been on set with directors, I always find that the directors who cannot pivot and adjust and roll with the punches, they crumble, because they're like, but I need the sun to stop moving. I'm like, well, dude, that's just not the way the world works. Yep. They're rigid. If you're rigid in the filmmaking process, you're dead. If Spielberg and Nolan have to worry about the sun, so do you. I mean, now,
right. Yeah.
And now not as much with the virtual production of The Mandalorian, where you could have a sunset for 12 hours.
Sure. Yeah. It makes something, but in even that case, though, you have to have an exorbitant amount of money to facilitate that sort of.
And you still have 12 hours. You still only have 12 hours in the day to get what you need. So
right. Yep.
I'm sorry.
Yep. No, yeah. I mean, I mentioned that we're going through Ask for Jane. Rachel Carey, the director of that, just, first time feature. She'd done a pilot and a couple smaller projects prior to, but like, I just couldn't, you can say these things and they might read them in books before they get on set, but you don't know how amenable someone's going to be. So you get there on the day of and you see how can they actually deal with it? Can they solve that problem with a million people around them asking them questions, et cetera, and all that pressure being on them. And she just did an amazing job of like, whatever, we shot that, a period piece, a late 60s period piece with 72 locations, like 70 something locations. Wow. 50 something locations, 74 speaking roles, 24 shoot days, with, $250,000.
Yeah, that was under 250.
Yeah.
Oh
period.
Man,
yeah.
that's impressive.
Period cars. I mean, a lot of it, we, to her credit too, writing the script, she did a good job of keeping things internal and, contained environments that we could properly dressed, at least to some degree or another, to maintain that. We obviously weren't getting any sweeping street shots or anything like that lined with period cars. We had a few period cars, and those are their own pain in the ass and very expensive. but they were mitigated to some degree. But yeah, I mean, whatever with all those variables, whatever the hell came up, she was able to just go, okay, well, what are our options? And like that's, as a producer, that is like that's the dream director thing to come out of their mouth. It's like, what are our options? Let me choose one, as opposed to freaking out and no, those options don't work, right. Which is not the way to approach this stuff, because you can't, it's of no benefit to freak out. We're not going to get to the finish line if you freak out. You know what I mean? And
I find that a lot of times when you have those limitations, the magic shows up that would never have shown up before. If you would have done it as you planned, it's never as good as what happened on the day, because I've this actor, this actor, this camera, this lighting, this scenario, this magic, you've got to be there ready to capture the lightning in the bottle and not try to control everything, unless you're Kubrick or Fincher. And then that's fine. And that's their process. But even then, I'm sure there's magic that happens on the day.
Yeah. That's how you get there, being that creative, like, keeping that muscle going and exercising it, as trite as that may sound, like that is the way you get good at this stuff, is to learn how to adapt and deal with whatever comes up. I mean, a canned story I've told probably a million times about that very first feature, All God's Creatures. We wanted it. We had this movie theater scene, and we wanted a claw machine in a movie theater lobby, and that was like, it was very important that happened in a movie theater lobby, because they're going to go see a movie after. It was so important to me as the writer and to us, everyone on the project. And we looked all over. I was still in New York at the time. We looked all over, finding a claw machine in a movie theater lobby that allowed us to shoot there for our literally borderline zero location budget. Just not happening. Of course, I lived on 100, and I don't know how familiar you are with New York, but I lived up in Spanish Harlem at the time, and right in the corner, I lived on 110th and between First and 2nd Avenue, and on 110th and 2nd Avenue, there was a bodega with a claw machine outside that I walked by every day in pre-production while we were looking for this location. And we couldn't find it. And I was walking by the bodega one day, and I was like, we're making this gritty love story, fucked up love story between these two dark people like a serial killer and a prostitute in New York City, it is 100% in line with what we're trying to do here for this scene to happen in this outside some grimy bodega, as opposed to in this beautifully lit, pretty movie theater lobby. Oh my God. And like I go in there and talk the bodega guy into it in like 5 minutes, and we have a solution, and it ended up catering to what the overall aesthetic of the film was, infinitely more so than if we'd got the thing we thought we needed. You know what I mean? And that is a product of problem solving that ended up serving what our end goal really was, and we didn't even know it. So
gotta be, have that. Yeah, exactly. And have those antennas open for when that happens. You gotta be open to it, because a lot of times filmmakers are just like this, and they're closed off, and they're like, this is my vision. And my vision that I've been with for 6 months, a year with this script. This is the only way it can be. Yeah.
I sat in that room all alone, and I had it exactly. It's exactly.
It has to be a claw machine in a movie theater, and the carpet needs to be red. And that's the stupidity that we do as filmmakers. I did that too. Like we all did that. Like, oh, it has to be this and it has to be that. But as you get older and you do more of these things, you just kind of go, does it have to be red? I think. No. What color do we have? Do we have blue? Blue, fine. Let's move on. It's just
on to other industries though. Like, that's a perfect example. Like, what other industry would you be, that rigid about every aspect of what you're trying to do professionally? Like, it's such a weird business in that regard.
I mean, architecture and construction. I mean, essentially, you can't really freeball a whole lot. Once the construction's going on, like, hey, you know what? I thought I wanted to move the wall over there. Like that's that's one of the businesses.
But it's certainly not. It's not the norm.
It's definitely not the norm. It's definitely not the norm. And also surgery. I would rather not my surgeon not kind of like, I
don't know, man. I got some friends that work in medical device sales and stuff, and I've heard some crazy stories.
I'm sure. Now, one thing that a lot of filmmakers don't even think about, and it's not talked about a lot, is how can a production protect themselves legally before going into production, in production, and post-production? Like, what are some tips on how to protect themselves legally? Basic stuff. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
For small budget projects, the best answer to that is get a good friend that's a lawyer.
Right, of course.
The best answer, because it's tough to find good legal advice inexpensively, for sure. Do your homework. There's enough at this point. There's no such thing, I think, in 2020. One of the beautiful things about working in film now, as opposed to what it would have been like pre-internet days, which I don't even know, most of the people listening to this probably can't even conceive that. But when I was first getting started, it was right kind of at the infancy stage. And I was like, some of the things we had to do, location scouting, trying to find some of the things that we needed, some of our production variables, like without the internet. I don't know how that ever happened without the internet, to be honest with you. But
I remember. I'm old enough, sir. Yeah? I remember. Oh yeah. I'm a bit old. I'm a bit older than you.
Until my late 20s, so I didn't.
I remember film.
Fucking difficult.
I remember film. I remember having to go into a dark bag and change film mags. And you only had 10 minutes at a time. It was incredible time. It was insane. It was a barbaric time where sometimes the PA would open up the can and ruin the last 10 minutes of footage, and you lost 6 hours. I've been there too. Oh yes, it was a joyous time.
Yeah. Anyways, the point would be that there's no such thing as not knowing how to do something anymore. Kind of, you can find an answer or someone who has the answer anywhere. You know what I mean, or about anything really, for the most part. And asking honestly, if you can't find it on your own, I have found, whether it be reaching out to filmmakers about distribution companies they've worked with or whatever it might be, filmmakers, especially in the independent sector, are very open to having conversations and being helpful. And like, I am wildly advocate for that, because I think all of our jobs and lives would be much easier if we were more transparent, more helpful, et cetera, et cetera. But I don't think there's any shortage of that necessarily. And if you just do the work to ask people who, and you have to do the work to know who has walked whatever that path is that you want to know about, whether it be a certain legal question or a certain production question or whatever it might be. But reaching out to those people and asking, how the hell did you do this? Like, if someone solved some wildly difficult problem, they're probably going to be all too excited to tout and talk about how they accomplished this very difficult thing. So asking questions and doing the research, whatever it might be it legal things or otherwise, is always the answer. If you don't have that free lawyer friend, to just lean on for an easy answer.
Now, we're going to talk next about my favorite part of the entire production process, which is distribution. So, I know you told me that you've been listening to the podcast for a while and you heard the whole distributor thing and how that whole thing went down. And you obviously have a lot of experience distributing your own films, either self or with a traditional distributor. Can you tell a little bit of story of what happened to which film was it that went through traditional? 22. Okay, so that went through traditional distribution.
And Ask for Jane both did, but the better story has played out with Catch-22.
So please enlighten the audience, sir.
Right. So Catch-22, we shot that in 2015, did the festival thing for most of 2016. At the tail end of 2016, we had the funny thing about distribution in the independent sector is you're not, unless you have some film, playing some big boy table festival, you're not good. These offers don't happen in a vacuum. They don't all come to you at once where you can weigh them, the pros and cons of each right alongside each other. That's not how it works. You have to get good at, not necessarily get good at, but understand whatever your goals might be, whether they're fiscal or, however you want it to be released. If the company's going to facilitate and be able to do that the way you want it, be able to gauge what you're being told by these companies and decide whether or not it meets your expectations / hope for what the distribution of your project will be. And in our case, we had a bunch come to us over the course of that festival run, and towards the tail end of it, we had one come in that actually had an MG, and it was a company I liked. What the guy in charge had to say to us, the acquisitions guy, was 108 Media up in Toronto, and we ended up going with them. And that was in, I want to say, October. We signed the deal we had a target street date of, I believe it was January 17th of 2017. So nice round numbers there. Mm-hmm. And it came out, and they did everything they said they were going to do as far as the digital release goes. There was no theatrical component to that. So it was just hitting all the platforms. And the way the MG was structured on the project, we were supposed to, it was, going to be due, I believe it was 2 weeks after the street date, or something like that. And then, XYZ, maybe 2 months after said street date, the second half of the payment was due. And, the whatever the window was, or the date comes on that first payment comes and goes. We don't have our check yet. I email and I'm like, hey guys. What's up?
How you guys doing? Hey, what's going on over there?
Yeah, and I was still, it was still early enough in my career, and I hadn't had enough bad things happening to me in the distribution realm where I didn't just expect the apocalypse. You know what I mean? Oh. So I was, I
hadn't come online yet, sir. If not, you would have been better prepared.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's funny. My very first film, we ended up getting a deal too, also a decent little MG, and they, they actually did all right, I would say. In the long run, they did some foreign stuff that we couldn't have facilitated on our own, but they were very, very old, old guard minded. They were always talking to us about DVDs and shit, even into like 2015, 2016. And I was like, why are you saying these words to me? Like, these words mean nothing.
Right.
Why are we not talking about every digital platform on the planet? So there were, that ended up going its own awry way too, but not nearly as bad as this one did. So anyways, yeah, that day comes and goes. I email them like, what's up? We get into this long, drawn out exchange. And in the interest of transparency in the book, like, I have a by email recounting of the exchange. Like, again, completely transparent. It's a beautiful thing, really. If you like email vitriol, I recommend checking out that part of it, sure, if nothing else. So it's just, we 2 month. It's a 2 month back and forth with their acquisitions person, their operations person, and they're kind of, to their credit, they were always very nice, and it came down to they were either lying, albeit nicely, or they were bordering on insolvency. And in either case, I was like, that's not a company I want my film with for what I think the deal was for 7 years, 5 or 7 years. So, they were fairly reasonable on the term, which you can't always get. But either way, I couldn't have our film. It wouldn't be responsible for me as the producer to our investors to keep our film in bed with a company that is going to either be lying or about to fold. So like it came down to me, I again, Googling, talking about your legal problems. I found a letter, a distribution agreement termination letter that I assuaged.
You paid homage to? You paid homage to?
To our needs. And, to their credit, they were actually they tried to talk me out of it a couple of times right there towards the end of it, but they eventually relinquished rights. We ended up getting the first half of the payment of the MG. It was $7,500, and they sent us the first $3,750 in between these two, in that first 2 week window, and me sending the letter. I did get the check. It comes in an envelope. There are two checks in the envelope. One is for $1,875. Another is for $1,875. And at first I opened the envelope and I'm like, that's kind of weird. Why is it two checks? And then as I go to the bank, I get to the ATM to deposit them, and I see one is post dated. So one was dated for
never a good sign.
Oh yeah, and the other one is post dated for 2 weeks out or something. And that's one of the fun parts of the email exchange. I'm like, guys, you got to be kidding me! Like, I wait for way longer than I'm supposed to get the checks at all, and then one of them's post dated. Like, are you out of your mind? So what is the explanation here?
So everyone listening, if you get a check that's post dated, and it's $1,875, that's generally not a good sign that your distributor's having problems paying you $1,800. It's a red flag. It's a red flag.
To put it mildly, yeah.
So continue, sir.
So I sent the letter. We ended up getting to keep that money. They didn't even ask for that back, which is not bad for a couple of months, I guess, of anguish. Through three months or so of anguish, but it created the problem of course, we have to, and they were rather expedient about that too. Again, like it's surprising for something that went so awry. Like it could have went a lot worse just as far as the personal side of it went. The exchanges could have been a lot meaner, I suppose, for a deal going this wrong. But they relinquished the rights and they have to get it off all the platforms, and then that's not always the cleanest of processes.
Oh yeah.
So then getting them relisted. In some cases, you can't even relist with some platforms. And that was part of that was one of the angles they took with trying to talk me out of it. They're like, I think it was iTunes and maybe Hulu, they were saying, and then, it wasn't even on Hulu at the time, but like we're talking to them at least. But they were saying that, there's some platforms you can't even get back on. I'm like, yeah, well, that's, what's like 10% of, or rather 100% of nothing is a lot less than 10% of something, you know what I mean? So like,
right.
That's
what was it? What was the deal? Was it 25-75, 20-80, 30-70, 60-40?
That was 70-30. I'm pretty sure was the split. Yeah, and our marketing cap might have been. It's all in the book. I'd have to look at it to remember. We're talking, a few years ago. But yeah, I mean, I had done all my homework as far as keeping the main deal points, and that's something I talk extensively about the book too. Understanding what those major deal points are. We didn't have a performance clause like we talked about before we jumped on. Like that's a really good thing to talk about these days. That I would certainly, particularly if they want some sort of term that's anything more than a half decade. Honestly, I would want some sort of performance clause at this point because there's just no reason to sign it unless there's an exorbitant MG, of course, that makes it.
And if there is an exorbitant MG, you can almost guarantee that that's the only money you'll ever see.
For sure. Yeah. The idea of recouping it all, for sure.
There's no way you'll ever, if you get a $200,000 upfront MG in today's marketplace,
the accounting is not going to go in your favor going forward.
I hate to tell you, I hate to tell you, but that's just not going to work out. And I was telling you this story, and I'll tell you, I'll say it now. The story of a filmmaker friend of mine who I was consulting that was a little too informed for this big distributor who shall remain nameless, but that we all know. And that is, that throws up 40 movies a month, if not more. And they were offering him an MG, and it was this whole deal. And I kept telling him, well, let's push them. Let's see how far we can get with them. And the second he asked for a performance clause, they said, you know what, we're just going to pass on this. After like wooing him and wanting it and promising him the world and everything. But the second he asks for a performance clause, they're like, abort. This guy knows too much. Abort. And it's not, for them, it's not worth the hassle to deal with an educated producer unless they have a former relationship. Then that's already kind of established with a sales agent or a producer. But with the new guys, like, oh no, this guy knows way too much. He's going to ask way too many questions. Yep. I don't want to deal with him. Next. For those companies where their business is structured around doing that kind of business and exploiting the undereducated and overly hopeful filmmaker. Yeah. And that's probably the biggest soapbox thing with the book is that it's, it sucks that it exists, but it's our job as the filmmakers to make it go away. And if we don't support it, if we don't let them take our films just because we think having their name on the project as a distributor is going to help our careers down the line, because these companies that operate this way and check off any of these red flags that I list off very explicitly, like if they hit any of those things, everyone in the industry knows it. You're not impressing anyone by having a film with a company that is known for operating like this. It doesn't give your film a badge of honor. It doesn't give your career a badge of honor. There is no advantage to giving away, again, if you're never going to see a dime back just because Disney's distributing your movie, which they wouldn't distribute an indie. But if Disney is distributing a movie, like I got distributed by Disney, I'm like, yeah, but you're broke. Yeah. It's just not, it just doesn't, it's sad how many filmmakers were, that's not the important thing. There's a close friend of mine. Sorry, go ahead. No, I wanted to say, and tell me your story about your close friend. Go ahead. Oh yeah, a close friend of mine that was produced the project. It was his first feature, and he ended up going with the very company that we're discussing, but won't say the name of. And it was important to him, that exact thing, to have this film, his first, be one that was released in like this. In the public eye, a legitimate way, as opposed to the sad, lonely place of self-distribution. And it harks to what's important to you. And like again, I'm not. He's a close friend of mine, and I'm not like that was his goal. That was his set of goals. And like even as the producer on the project, it's his project. I'm just helping him make it happen. And like that, understanding what your goals are with the project. And being able to look at these distribution offers in that light and make it a responsible decision that achieves whatever those goals were that you set for yourself is the important thing. Like if that is what your goal is, then fine. I told him numerous times, I'm like, listen, you will never see a dime in this deal. It will never happen. Like understand that if you're going to take it. And he understood it and decided to do it anyways. And like, you have to just accept that because that was important to him. But I want to change that. I want us to stop viewing that as a positive thing. Filmmakers, I want to kind of dig into this a little bit because I think it's something that's definitely not talked about, and I feel it's a sickness that filmmakers have, and it is, and I get it, especially when you there's two reasons I think this happens. One, ego. You just want to say that you were distributed by X company. Like, hey, I want to have my film. Like everybody wants to have their film at A24. Like that's as an independent. Like we all want. They're the Sundance of distribution. And they release a deal like this from a company like that. That's kind of the point, You don't get deals like that from you. Torture doesn't ask you to foot their operating costs. Right. Exactly. So these kind of distribution companies that are kind of like elevated art house kind of brands, you want to just get with one of those, and you don't care how abusive or the advantage you're being taken, all the money that they're going to steal or anything. You don't care because you just want to say that you directed a movie that was distributed by them, which is insanity, as opposed to like, you self-distributed. I'm sorry about that. But it's not a sad, lonely place. I hate that that's exactly how we think because well, first of all, that's an image that the industry has perpetrated. So that's a marketing ploy by the distribution side. Like, you don't want to self-distribute. You'll never make a dime. You need us. You need us to make it. And you know what? Depending on, it's a per project basis. If you've got a $5 million movie, self-distribution is a tough model to play. It's a tough model to play. If you got $1 million+ movie, self-distribution is not impossible, but you got to hit every target exactly. So that's why those budgets lower the budget the better chance you have of recouping and being profitable in your films. So there is a place for good quality partnerships with traditional distributors, honest, which is, it's an oxymoron, I know, but it's like military intelligence. It just doesn't jumbo shrimp. It just doesn't. But if you can partner with someone like that, and then also carve out some rights for yourself and maybe create ancillary products, and you have something that you could build up. Like, I don't think there's going to be a lot of, ask for Jane, lunch boxes.
Action figures. Right?
Action figures. So it depends.
For those.
It depends on the project. But if the certain projects have that, it's absolutely doable. But self-distribution, I'd rather be, and I have been, my films have been, I've self-distributed a lot of my films. I'd rather be in positive rich off of my movie and not distribute one of these guys, and instead of being broke and have the ego trip of, I was distributed by X distributor. Right. And I want everyone. I want everyone out there to listen to and hear that. And I think you and I are both very passionate about that. Go ahead.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's not even a matter of like, yes, it is harder and it is more work to self-distribute. And that's why so many filmmakers are adverse to it, because they just want to get onto their next film. And that's we've all heard that whole component of it a million times. But even if, there's an excerpt from the book that's from this whole soapbox section about distribution and fucking getting rid of these companies that are preying on filmmakers that don't know any better. Like, there's the math problem example in there. The good deal only makes $1,000, and like, that sounds terrible unless you made your film for less than $1,000, which is not a terrible decision. But whatever it is, like it's 10% of something is better than 100% of nothing. It's a very simple thing. And like, the idea that we have to, we already made the point. I don't know. We've made the point.
Yeah, I mean, the whole process of giving away your film because you're exhausted or you're not educated. Well, in all honesty, that's a failure on you as a film producer, as a filmmaker, and as a producer. You need to educate yourself on this process. And there's no excuse. There's just no excuse. You know what the latest lenses are. You know that the Blackmagic just came out with a 12K camera. Fantastic. That's great. But you know what? That doesn't matter. The story matters. The story and the creative process is extremely important in this process. There's no doubt about it. But just as important, if not a bit more important sometimes, is the distribution and the business side of it, because without that, you can't make the art. And that's what I've been yelling at the top of my lungs for so much. And I know what that's the core lessons of your book is you got to understand the business. And it's not sexy. It's not sexy. It's not the sexy part of it.
It depends, man.
Well, I love it.
Finance. I enjoy the pretty spreadsheet, Alex. And if you're not one of those people, you should partner up with someone who is.
Correct. And that's another thing you should absolutely do without question. Now, so that was your traditional distribution. So how did you do the self-distribution on the other project?
So yeah, Love is Dead, we self-distributed, and that was something, walking into it. So Love is Dead is an adaptation of a stage play that a buddy of mine wrote, and it's a crazy, crazy dark comedy about every possible horrible aspect of the human condition, and it's based on a stage play. It's a feel-good film. Yeah, Disney type stuff. So yeah, I mean, we were looking at the project initially. He sends it to me even before he's put it up as a play, and immediately I'm like, this is like his brand of comedy is just it's brilliant, and I love it. But it is dark in a very, very specific type of comedy that not everyone's going to love. And we're looking at it, and I'm like, this would play. It's basically 3 scenes in 3 New York apartments. That's what the whole piece is. So I'm like, that already kind of plays to me very sitcom-y. It's a stage thing to begin with. We should shoot this like an old, it has kind of this old sitcom feel to the pacing and the type of comedy, almost Married with Children-ish or All in the Family is kind of very much the vibe to it. I'm like, why don't we shoot it aesthetically like that and make it this, like, go all the way with that and, shoot it in a 4:3 aspect ratio. And then I was, found plugins and stuff for the editing side of it that kind of gave it that degraded VHS look, that is not thing to achieve these days. So yeah, and we went we painted in a studio audience with the audio track and everything, and just went all the way with
so you could fairly say it's an experimental film. It's not mainstream as much.
Yeah, no, we put in, we took old PSAs and cut them in as commercial breaks that kind of commented on the narrative itself. There's an opening title sequence. It's just whole 9 yards, with it being like this Sunday special television event kind of thing. Sure. So yeah, just completely out of the box. And talking to festivals that I have very good relationships with the directors of, who have programmed our stuff before, me and Shawnee both. We sent it to them. They're like, "What the fuck is this, guys?" We don't have a TV section. I'm like, it's not a TV section. It's a feature film. It just looks like a TV thing. Even we knew walking into it that we were doing something that was completely out of the box.
But what was the
budget?
We're gonna
have a hard time.
But what was the budget?
That's so yeah, exactly. Knowing that, we structured it to be a very economically produced thing, and we shot it for under $35K. It's like $32.5K.
Right. I was going to say, when I saw the trailer, I was like, this is not a $250,000 movie. If it is, no, you should be shot. So I was like, no, it has to be a lower budget. Yep. And that's okay. And real quick, I just want to hit on this. Because you're going experimental, you're going for a much smaller audience, and the chances of you recouping your money are harder because of the material. You used a budget that reflected that. And most filmmakers, a lot of filmmakers don't understand. A lot of them are like, this is my opus. We're going to do this for $250,000. And you and I both know that this at a $250,000 budget is going to be rough.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, after doing this stuff for such a long time, man, like I read material, and like the first, I can't even, I also write and direct and stuff. And like, I'm trying to, do the creative side of it as well, but I can't, the business background in me, and then just the long amount of time I've spent producing. I know how hard it is to ask people for money. It sucks. So like, I'm trying to do that as little as possible. So like, when I'm looking for material or produce material, I'm looking like, what is the producibility of this? Like, and reading Shawnee's play, 3 scenes, people being clever in 3 apartments. Like, I'm like, dude, we can, we did that incredibly cleverly. We rented a theater in Long Island City in New York, and literally like a stage theater. We ripped out all the risers, basically created a television studio environment around the stage where the seating used to be. And then when we were done, we had to rebuild those risers and stuff and put the plate space back like it was. And, we were able to get that on a deal, and the owner of the theater, also an actor, we cast in the film to kind of grease the wheels on the negotiations.
A good idea. Always a good idea.
For the location fees. And, we shot the thing on 3 iPhones, which that's the funny thing about it. Like, one of the things that's kind of something that's worth talking about now, Amazon's being weird about their content right now, and they're pulling things off and stripping things down. And Love is Dead's one of the things that got ripped off. They I don't know for sure. Maybe they just think it's shitty. I don't know if it's an actual image quality thing, but like, we shot that in 4K. Like, it was a beautiful image to start with, and we ripped it down to what it looks like visually, this really degraded looking, borderline terrible image, the standard definition look to it. Like, that was a creative decision, not a lack of actual quality in the underlying image. So yeah, we shot it on iPhones, and the image looked beautiful, and we were able to rig the theater in a way with the lighting where we didn't have to do the setups were easy, and we did that in 3-day shoots. We did 1 day of rehearsal, 1 day where we shot kind of like with each episode. There were 3 episodes. We called them episodes, shoots, whatever you want to call them. With each episode, the cast would come in. We rehearse for a day, just me and the actors. And then the next day in the morning, we would do a little more rehearsing, shoot the opening credit, just little insert shots and stuff to give me added points and what have you. Then run it a few times for everyone. The whole crew would be there that second day for everyone to see. And then the third day, come in and just run the scene front to back into the ground with our 3-camera setup, where we didn't have to cut. We just run the thing like a play, basically, the way a sitcom does. And we did that 3 times in a row with 1 day in between to rip the whole set down. And our poor production designer had to build a whole new apartment, overnight, basically. So we did that whole shoot. And the last one ended up, because of a snowstorm, we did the last shoot in 2 days instead of 3. So we ended up, on that second day, we shot the whole thing.
So out of these 3 movies, were all of them profitable? Did any of them break even, or did any of them lose money?
None of them are in the black. Yeah.
Okay.
After Jane's very early in the thing, and we came out theatrically last year in May and hit the VOD platforms in October. So it's still very early to say, especially with a $250,000 movie, how that's going to go. Catch-22, we shot for $55K, and I'd say we're probably a third of the way there on recoupment on that, especially after the whole the distributor default thing that certainly slowed things down. And yeah, I mean, with the self-distribution thing on Love is Dead, a long way to go there still, but we didn't actually get to the point of how we did it. I mean, with that kind of a thing, it was such they're all, if you're going to self-distribute, knowing what are you going to try to do with this? And we were so outside the box with what we created and how we created it that I think that the chief marketing tool we're using for that is the independent film community, the idea of this crazy project that we created. How did we do it? And, I hit all the Film Courage and all those types of outlets that are geared towards, just as you're doing, Alex, the independent filmmaker.
Exactly.
So, again, just knowing what it is and how to market it. And, the idea is over time, do that enough and you are able to make it a viable business in the long term. I mean, you're not going to, with self-distribution, especially smaller projects, you're not going to have that lump sum payment, like kind of
it's a trickle
out of, it's a trickle for sure. So that's how you approach it for sure.
And, can you discuss a little bit about niche marketing and event marketing? Because I know that's something that you do to get the word out on your films.
Well, niche marketing, it's After Jane is a good example of that. It's a film about reproductive rights, and that's one of the things I learned with After Jane is how much having that social justice component can make just the whole process just more enjoyable, for one, because it's more it gives it more purpose for you as a filmmaker. It gives you a reason other than just telling a story, and that's a really nice aspect to have for these projects. But we had companies or organizations reaching out to us just from our initial press drops about the project, like wanting,
of course,
to screen the film, because it carried this message. And that was, Planned Parenthood was a company we had ties to and were able to align with, and NYRA, and another reproductive rights, women's justice organization based out of New York, that we were able to align with and do a ton of marketing with throughout the festival process and then into the actual theatrical release. And we've done events and screenings with companies or organizations like that. And I mean, it's everyone wants the answer as to how to do this for their own project. And there's no answer to it. It's it's the shittiest thing to hear, because we all want to have the answer, but you have to just do the work and know figure out who's going to care about that, about what you're trying to say, whether it is just a little story or it has some sort of overarching bigger purpose and getting out into the world, knowing what that is. And that goes all the way back to doing that work, market research in advance. But also you learn a lot of that going through it. We didn't know that we were going to have the kind of response or the political climate that we ended up having with Ask for Jane, because it was pre-election that the project started, and then Trump being elected, and then women's reproductive rights coming under attack as they have was not something we planned for, but that cropped up. And I don't want to, I've said a million times, it's horrific for humanity, but it's fantastic for the film. And
I understand what you said. Yeah,
what I mean?
It's timely. It's timely.
Yeah. Embracing that and not, you don't want to say exploiting it, but if that's the message of the film, then that, it's all that money. Yes, it's good for getting it out there and our bottom line, sure, but it also allows you to say it in a bigger way. You know what I mean? And that's a beautiful thing. So just
look, it's not
receptive to that.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. There's films that just hit at the certain time, and they galvanate around the time. There's Easy Rider. When Easy Rider showed up, it was a time for Easy Rider. That was the movie of its time, and it completely shaked up Hollywood when it showed up. And it was was Dennis Hopper just making something he wanted to make.
A little indie, he was not checking some marketing box and making a crazy ass movie.
Well, it was the 70s, brother. That was a whole other world, and there was no niche marketing. It was just let's just make a movie and get high a lot. And that's what they did. They actually filmed them.
Have you read Easy Riders, Raging Bulls?
Of course. Yeah. I've read all those books. It's amazing to hear those stories. Now I'm going to ask you a few questions to ask all my guests, sir. What advice would you give a filmmaker trying to break into the business today?
I want to steer away from what everyone says that, if you can do something else, do it. Because that is probably the best advice, but we've all heard it a million times. I've said it a few times. Don't chase things. Don't chase what other people tell you should make. Make the shit you want to watch. There's so many reasons it benefits you. It better prepares you to make that film. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you care about the stuff that you're making because it's stuff you watch, then you're that much more equipped to tell that kind of story. And it's all the more reason, like, I should never make a faith film because I'm not going to church on Sunday. So right. I should make a movie.
It's nothing you're passionate about. Got it.
Right. Exactly. You know what I mean? So, that is probably the best advice I think I could give someone getting started is to do what you think you would want to sit in front of a screen and watch, because you're going to be best equipped to do that.
What is the lesson that took you the longest to learn, whether in the film business or in life?
I'm a stubborn, strong-minded person, so learning to step out of the way and to properly delegate. I'm somewhat of a control freak, and I want everything to go my way.
Sure.
What I mean? And learning to just step back and let go of some things, whether it be control of a project or trying to, you can only control what you can control, and stop trying to control the things that you can't. And that is certainly a life lesson, much more so than a film one. But it's applicable, of course.
Now, what is the biggest fear you had to overcome to make your first film?
I thought about this one. I listened to the show. I thought about this one because I wanted to be prepared. And I don't know, man. Like, we were so ignorant.
Preach, brother.
We had no idea what to be scared of. We were absolutely carried by the desire to do it, like I almost want to say, to be able to say that we did it, which is such a misguided reason to make a movie. We didn't have, we weren't trying to make a movie that truly said something. It was something that we thought would be entertaining. It didn't have some sort of more important message or something. We were just trying to make a piece of entertainment and I guess prove to ourselves that we could do it. So I don't know if we had fears because there was no way to know, I don't know.
Ignorance was bliss. Ignorance was bliss.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I don't know if there were any, man. I really don't.
3 of your favorite films of all time.
This is impossible too, man. I don't know. I can tell you the 3 filmmakers I like.
Fair enough.
I can't tell you 3 movies is insane, dude. That's insane to narrow it down to that. The Duplass brothers, I think they're awesome. Genuinely magical beings. Everything they touch is gold. Sean Baker.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sean's amazing.
Seeing Tangerine at I was at Slamdance that year with the film when that hit, and like I don't know if I've ever watched anything where I was like,
what just happened?
It had so much. It was just so much energy with, and again, knowing part of the reason I like these filmmakers like this is because I respect so much what they accomplish, knowing the constraints they work within, and like that I work in those constraints every day, and for them to achieve such incredible with those limitations is just so impressive to me.
Yeah.
And I actually kind of a bigger filmmaker, I guess, is my drawing a blank on his name. 7. Fincher.
Oh, Fincher, of course, Fincher, man. Yeah, he's one of my top list as well.
Which is not the same thing, but he's everything. Again, someone who just he's able to keep it on the darker side usually, which I like, even with these bigger projects, which is such a hard thing to do.
That's why he doesn't make as many movies as he should. Is because
exactly.
He needs to make Mindhunter, and he needs $200 million to do it because he's Fincher. And that's why he should have at least another 4 or 5 movies in his filmography. But
probably.
Yeah. I would love to see a Fincher comedy. That would be interesting.
yeah, for sure.
Because we got a Scorsese comedy. We got a couple of Scorsese comedies.
Those really dark movies, though, man. Like, 7 has kind of like him and Freeman and Pitt are.
Oh no, there's comedic moments.
There.
There's like Fight Club is on my top it's on my top 5 list, of course. But his Fight Club is very funny. It's ridiculously funny, but it's that kind of humor that he does bring. Oh, he has humor. I mean, House of Cards has some amazing humor in it. But I'm talking about, I want him to do Airplane 3. Like, I want to see
full on slapstick. Yeah.
like Naked Gun 44. I want Fincher to do Naked Gun 44. I think that would be amazing.
It seems like the easiest thing in the world to market too, just because it's such a far cry from his work. People would go see it just as like a. I want to
see Fincher do a comedy, and I want to see Nolan do a comedy. I want to see a Nolan comedy as well. Can you imagine?
I think even less likely, but yeah.
Because Kubrick did a comedy. He did a great comedy. Yeah, Dr. Strangelove. So it's.
And that's one of the. I often struggle with mid 70s, sometime, I would even say maybe late 70s content. It's slower, it's more static.
Sure.
Very active thing, So I often struggle with older films, but Strangelove is brilliant. It's hysterical. It's amazing how far ahead of its time.
Oh, with everything he made,
particularly on the comedy front.
Everything he made was so far ahead of his time. Every film we catch up. I still remember getting out, and I'm you've probably even heard this story. I've said it a bunch of times. I came out of Eyes Wide Shut in '99. And I'm with my friends from high school, and they're like, "What'd you think?" I'm like, "I don't know, but I think I'm probably going to get it in about 10 years." And I did. It took me 10 years when I got married. And then I was like, "Oh." And then every single time I watch it, I'm like, "Oh." Every time you watch any of his films, you get another layer, and that's what great art does. Now, where can people find you and your book and everything you do?
Well, my website, NYEH Entertainment, has everything I've ever done there. The book, Still Filmmaking the Hard Way is the name, is available on wherever human beings read books these days, iBooks, Amazon, Kobo, et cetera, Scribed. It's also available in paperback if you like clutter.
Sure.
On Amazon. But yeah, I have an excerpt on my website. It's been populated a few places. Raindance's blog has it, Film Shortage, but it is, even if you don't want to buy the book, whatever, I get money's tight these days, but the excerpt is free, and it is very much on the soapbox of, we got to stop letting these companies survive on our blood. So please go.
They're parasitic. They're parasitic.
Yeah, it's parasitic for sure. But that's free. So go read that, please. And let's stop supporting that.
Absolutely. Hashtag end predatory distribution.
Yeah. Hashtag fuck.
Josh, man, it's been a pleasure having you on the show, brother. Thank you for dropping the knowledge bombs on the tribe and fighting the good fight out there, man. I appreciate you doing what you do, man.
Absolutely, man. Thank you so much for having me.
I want to thank Josh for coming on the show and dropping his knowledge bombs on the tribe. If you want to get links to anything we spoke about in this episode, including how to get a hold of Still Filmmaking the Hard Way, head over to the show notes at indiefilmhustle.com/434. And if you haven't already, please head over to filmmakingpodcast.com and leave an honest review for the podcast. It really helps us out a lot. And I know you guys have noticed that we've been getting really insane guests lately, and that trend is going to continue, because my guest on Tuesday is going to blow your mind, and I want you to prepare yourselves, because it will be the record-holding episode for being the longest conversation I have ever had on the show, at clocking in, I think, a little bit over 3 hours. But I promise you, it is arguably one of the best episodes I have ever recorded. I can't wait to share it with you guys. And I'll give you a little hint. He's made big movies with Johnny Depp and Denzel Washington. I'm just going to leave it at that. Thank you so much for listening, guys. As always, keep that hustle going. Keep that dream alive. Stay safe out there, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Indie Film Hustle podcast at indiefilmhustle.com. That's INDIEFILMHUSTLE.com.